So let's start with the theme of venture colonialism that you cover in your book. I think that as someone who's been in the venture capital world for the last decade or so, as I was researching for my own book, The Great Tech Game, and I came across these terms, the adventure capitalists of the day, and those early ships were going out to explore new lands. And I looked at the structures in which the queen or the kings that were sometimes shareholders in these exploratory ships would structure their relationships with the ones who actually went out there, seem to have lots of parallels, if I may say, with the way the venture capital industry today is structured. And so that had, I remember, really piqued my curiosity. And then, of course, you talk about this as venture colonialism, corporate colonialism, and various other such concepts. So why don't you actually start off and tell us a little bit about venture colonialism as the way you've defined it in your book, Empire Incorporated?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great place to start, and I'm glad you noticed that concept. So there's maybe say there's two, maybe three ways that we might think about this idea. The first is I was trying to find a way. The book covers about 400 years of history in different proportions, and I was trying to find a way to think about how do we glue them together. So the first one thing I wanted to point out, I guess the term is meant to harken back to an earlier period in the 16th and 17th centuries where the book starts. What we might call today an investment or shareholding, or the kinds of words we've come to use in the modern world, one of the more common terms that people would have recognized in the 16th or 17th century would have been an adventure. A venture or an adventure. I'm adventuring my capital. I'm an adventurer in a company, that sort of thing. It was even in the names of the companies, the Merchant Adventurers of England, for example, or the Russia company, the Muscovy company, whose original first name was the Merchant Adventurers for the Discovery of Regions, Islands, Dominions, and Places Unknown, right? Something like that. I might have gotten those jumbled up, but we make a mistake if we think what they meant was something like a swashbuckling quest or something we might think of as an adventure today, a sort of Lord of the Rings sort of thing or something like that. What they meant was risk, right? They meant they were adventuring their capital and often their persons, their people, their very lives, but they were risking them for returns. And so I wanted to sort of think about the idea that a lot of this the foundations for the kind of colonial enterprise I'm talking about involve people from a variety of aspects of civil society, both within the state and outside the state, undertaking these ventures through the double meaning, through these kinds of companies, which we might think of as venturers or merchant venturers or merchant adventurers, that sort of thing. But I guess the other reason that the term appealed to me, I was thinking about it in this way, is that it also helps us to remember that the argument of the book, which is that for colonialism to happen, there had to be multiple and oftentimes contradictory impulses or motivations, right? So venture colonialism is not venture capitalism per se. You've been in venture capitalism. I haven't, so you can dispute me on this. But I think a lot of people would sort of think about venture capitalism in a passive way as just being about returns on financial returns on investment in some ways. But I know that actually that's not true. That there's venture capitalism with ethical and political and other kinds of motivations, environmental, these sorts of things. But I don't know that it sort of hits people immediately. So the venture colonialism meant to suggest that we need to remember that these companies, merchants, government officials, many, many others, sometimes philosophers, got involved in these projects for a range of reasons. Some were in it for what you might think of as commercial returns. Some were in it for religious purposes, or some were for political purposes. There's some companies in my book that seem to be driven by people's philosophical programs. I say in the book, there's a fair number of people who are invested because they like to gamble, or they're socially connected to other people who are investing, that sort of thing. So the idea is venture colonialism is neither venture capitalism nor colonial venture. It's something in between, and that makes you kind of think a little bit about not coming to the past with our present assumptions and then coming back to the present, having looked at the past, to think maybe our assumptions are wrong about how this works, if that makes sense.